Hey everyone, and welcome back to the second episode of Failure Chronicles and part 2 of our breakdown of Alain de Botton's book, The School of Life on Failure. It's your host, Saber Moshirian, here with you. So, I was planning to summarize this book in 3 parts or 3 episodes, but after going through it again, I realized that a long 3-part summary might not be super engaging or effective. Because of that, I've decided to break down the rest of the book into 4 shorter parts. This means that episode 2 of Failure Chronicles been split into 4 sections to make it more interesting. What you are listening to right now is the first part of episode 2 of Failure Chronicles. Last time, in the first of our series on de Botton's book, we dove into his philosopher's take on life's ups and downs. What failure really means, according to him, and even his thoughts on suicide. This time, we are tackling what happens after you have hit a rough patch, but decided against throwing in a towel for good. Of course, we are talking about the big, gut-wrenching failures here, not just your everyday little failings. Because, let's face it, life throws a lot of balls our way. The author wants to talk us through what goes down after those major fails. What kind of feelings you might be wrestling with. And he even throws in some advice on how to get through it. The book takes a good hard look at how we can wrap our heads around the inherent crappiness of the world. It suggests that since we cannot really call the shots on this built-in negativity, we should figure out a way to roll with it, so our life journey is not quite so bumpy. So, the big question is, how do we actually do that? The author points out that nowadays, people can be seriously brutal, even though they try to play it cool with politeness, good manners, and those ever-present smiles. We see it play out in all sorts of conflicts, from full-blown wars to everyday arguments. To really get this point across, the author wants us to check out the comment sections online. It is like there is no real face-to-face fighting happening there, but people feel way more comfortable saying what they actually think from behind their screens at home, with nobody looking over their shoulder. That is where we get a real peek into the minds of people who might smile and politely step aside if they bumped into us on the street. But online, different story. Mr. de Botton believes that the virtual world often gives us a clear picture of the real world's dark side, showing us just how much nastiness and cruelty are out there. It kinda thinks all the efforts from religions and ethical teachings to make us better people have pretty much gone nowhere. He argues that to avoid being totally blindsided by the word's harshness, we gotta ditch our naivety and accept that humans have a bit of a mean streak. And there are a lot of folks out there who are not exactly overflowing with love and understanding. So, when we mess up big time, we should brace ourselves for some pretty unpleasant reactions. But we need to keep in mind that it is not always a personal attack. After a major screw up, a lot of our friends and family might bail on us. Strangers could say something seriously awful things. And if our situation gets any media attention, we could be facing a tidal wave of hate and insults that feels impossible to handle. Feeling suicidal after dealing with that much negativity, totally understandable. But the key to getting tough against all this malice, anger, and hate is to figure out where it is all coming from. Yeah, we probably made a mistake that led to our downfall, but we do not deserve all that hatred and nastiness. If we get that reason from the awful comments, the sharp words from people around us, and our friends teaching us, is that they might be going through their own stuff. It can actually make us feel a bit more okay, according to the author. Someone who has been through a big failure and come out the other side has a much deeper understanding of life and is less likely to be a jerk. Someone who is mentally stable, got their head screwed on right, and is generally happy with their life, would not go online to kick someone who was already down like that. Trying to explain why people get so filled with hate, Mr. de Botton says that when we have got a ton of problems stacking up, we can get a bit jumpy. Sometimes, seeing someone else trip up can make us feel a little bit better about ourselves, and leaving a nasty comment can even make us feel calmer. Another reason is that some of the things we call scandals and think they are totally wrong are actually things a lot of people secretly enjoy or wish they could do but don't dare. When we do those things and get called out on it, they might feel jealous and resentful of us for doing something they have not. The next chunk of the book talks about facing failure when it hits the headlines, when our mess-ups become public knowledge. The author believes, and you have probably heard this before, that the media loves bad news, and he sees this bad news as basically failure stories. He says every negative news item is about someone or a group of people failing in some way. The media often jumps on these stories, reporting them harshly without really digging into the details, just focusing on the negative stuff and showing zero forgiveness. For instance, according to the news, no criminal ever feel sorry, and no politician ever tries to actually fix anything. But if you look back, old form of media like stories and books used to deal with human failures in a different way, with more understanding. This kind of approach started with tragedies in ancient Greek literature, way back around the 4th century BC. In these stories, writers looked at the screw-ups of people and myth, but they had a more realistic view of just how complicated people are. In their stories, when someone messed up, they did not suddenly become a villain. They were still human, with their weaknesses. Just maybe had a run of bad luck and got caught doing the same kind of stuff we all do, but we have not been called out on yet. So, our first reaction to news of someone's failure should be to feel for them and maybe a little bit scared for ourselves. Because we know how lucky we have been to not have our own mistakes plastered all over the internet yet. Let's just take a second and think about how the media today would cover the heroes of those old legendary tragedies. What would they say about a guy like Othello, for example? They would probably paint him as a monster, even though nobody is really a straight-up monster. People are complicated mixtures of different traits, desires, and chemical reactions that might lead them to do something wrong in one area, but be super kind in another. So, the next part of the book gets into dealing with what the author calls our own hamartia. Basically, the mistakes we make or the not so great parts of our personality. Look, when we fail, one of the things that makes it tougher to swallow is that we tend to see people as either totally good or totally bad. We get stuck in this simple way of thinking about right and wrong. The bummer for us is that after we screw up, we might start thinking we are just permanently and completely bad. But the ancient Greeks had this other cool idea. They basically believed two things that make a lot of sense. They figured everyone deep down wants to do good. So, in that way, we are all basically good people. But we are also all gonna mess up at some point. Understanding this helps us be a bit easier on ourselves. We have all done some pretty bad stuff or said some really hurtful things. But does that automatically make us unforgivable, awful people? Not necessarily. Because there is a difference between who we are at our core and the mistakes we make along the way. Our mistakes definitely shape our lives, but they do not define every single thing about us. Our essential self exists beyond those screw-ups, no matter how terrible they might seem. This more forgiving way of thinking gives us a little mental breathing room. We should definitely try to make things right after we mess up. Take responsibility for our actions, feel bad about it, and say sorry to anyone we have hurt. But at the end of the day, we also should not beat ourselves up endlessly. The next thing the book touches on is how to handle the pity we might get from our friends and family, and even just acquaintances. When we are going through a tough time, some folks will reach out to try and comfort us and offer a hand, while the rest of the world might just want to pile on. This can be nice, but sometimes that pity can actually feel pretty yucky. Why does it make us feel so awkward? It is because when society seems ready to write us off, we try extra hard to show we still belong and do not want to be thrown away. But when people we know personally pity us, it kind of sticks us in that rejected category, which is why it feels so bad. The author points out that the difference between pity and empathy is that when someone pities you, they kind of think your bad luck is yours alone and could never happen to them. But when someone empathizes, they get that it could happen to anyone. Mr. de Botton says that a lot of the time, the person offering pity does not even realize they are doing it. They just want to be helpful. They might be a bit scared of ending up in the same boat as you. So, we should not necessarily get mad at them. But sometimes it might be worth gently reminding them that the kind of trouble we are in could happen to absolutely anyone. The next topic the author dives into is dealing with our friends who seem to have it all together. This part of the book talks about what comes after the initial shock of failure, the sadness, and maybe even the embarrassment. We have decided not to take the easy way out, but we still have those friends from before who have not messed up and seem to be living the good life, which can make us feel constantly jealous when we hang out with them. Mr. de Botton has a couple of ideas on how to handle this. First, he says it is totally normal to feel envious, but try to remember that everyone's life path is different. Your successful friends probably have not faced the same hurdles you have, so life might have been a bit kinder to them. Try not to play the comparison game too much. His second suggestion which might be a tough pill to swallow, is that your life is different now. So maybe you do not need to keep hanging out with those old friends as much. Those interactions might just leave you feeling resentful and down. Instead, try making new friends with people who are in a similar boat to you. People you have also experienced their fair share of setbacks. It doesn't matter if their past is different from yours or if they have different interests. What really matters is that you understand each other. It suggests that, just like those dating apps that hook you up with people who like the same stuff, you should find friends who get what you are going through, so you can ditch those envious feelings. The next hurdle we face after failing and just trying to keep going is dealing with our own self-esteem. Here, the author says that while being super self-absorbed is generally seen as a bad thing, there is a healthy kind of self-respect that psychologists actually recommend. And that is inner peace or contentment. Inner satisfaction is a form of self-love, but in a good way. However, after a big failure, we are often dealing with our mistakes, getting hit from society, and feeling rejected. So, naturally, we might lose that inner satisfaction and become pretty unhappy with ourselves. The author wants us to look to Buddhist teachings here. Buddhists believe that our ultimate goal is to let go of our ego and our attachments to ourselves, to simply be an observer in the world. We should try to move in that direction and find a purpose in our lives that is not all about me, like taking care of others or helping older folks. Things that are bigger than our own little world. This can help fill that empty space from feeling bad about ourselves, and maybe over time we can start to feel okay again. Okay, that was the episode 2, part 1. Thank you so much for tuning into the Failure Chronicles, and I really hope you enjoy this episode. You can catch the rest of the summary on failure in the upcoming episodes. You can listen to the Failure Chronicles podcast on most podcast apps, including Castbox and Spotify, and please help it out by recommending it to your friends. You can also watch videos of each episode on this podcast YouTube channel. You can also reach out to me via the email provided in the podcast description to share your thoughts, critiques, and suggestions. Thank you for watching me. Have a great day and catch you next time.